What kind of store manager tells a crying kid to get lost over 50 cents? Zeke Parlow stared at the screen in his home office, jaw clenched. The customer complaint came in late last night. A woman had written about her nephew being turned away from one of his candy stores over being short 50 cents for a small bag of gummies. The boy had walked out crying, and no one in the store had helped. It wasn't the first complaint from store 17. Customer satisfaction had dipped. Employee turnover was high. And still, District Manager Russ kept insisting everything was stable. Zeke had owned the chain for 9 years now. 19 candy shops scattered across 3 states. He'd bought the business from a retiring couple who had started it in the 80s. Built it up, modernized it, expanded the brand. But lately, sitting behind a desk in the main office, Zeke felt further and further from the sugar-coated dream he'd worked so hard to build. He rubbed his temples, the complaint still open on his laptop. He couldn't keep relying on filtered reports. Something felt off. He needed to see it for himself. So he made a decision. Zeke called up a friend who worked in makeup and wardrobe for small film productions. By noon the next day, he was wearing a scruffy beard, glasses with thick lenses, a name tag that said Doug, and a delivery uniform. His hair was dyed a dusty brown. His voice softened with a slight southern lilt. The disguise was good. No one at Store 17 had ever met him. Some employees didn't even know what the owner looked like, especially with the layers of corporate structure between them. It was the perfect setup. Doug from Sweet Supply, he said to the manager when he walked in that morning holding 2 cardboard boxes. Inventory got rerouted here by mistake. Mind if I drop it in the back? The store manager, a wiry guy with a buzz cut and a Bluetooth headset jammed in one ear, barely looked up. Yeah, backroom's that way, he muttered. Just make it quick. Zeke nodded and made his way past the shelves of sour ropes, chocolate bark, and seasonal bins. The place looked colorful but felt cold. The music was too loud. The employees all had the same blank expression. A girl behind the counter chewed gum while scrolling on her phone. He dropped the boxes in the back, then lingered. Hey, y'all hiring? He asked the manager on his way out. Could use a few shifts while I'm in town. Buzz Cut looked him over, uninterested. You got retail experience? Used to stock shelves at a toy store, Zeke said. Fine. You can shadow one of the floor staff today. We're short anyway. 2 people no-showed. You break anything, you buy it. Zeke kept his smile polite. Fair enough. He was handed a red apron and paired with a young employee named Milo, who looked about 20 and seemed too tired for his age. Milo explained the basics: how to restock candy bins, how to use the register, how to scan barcodes on bulk items. He was kind, patient, and soft-spoken, all the opposite of the manager, whose name turned out to be Trent. Zeke watched Trent bark orders at employees, ignore customers who needed help, and disappear into the back room every 20 minutes. At one point, Zeke overheard him on the phone say, I'm not babysitting these part-timers. They know the rules. If they can't keep up, they can quit. Around noon, Zeke was wiping down the counter when he noticed 2 kids walk in, holding hands. A boy and a girl, maybe 8 or 9. Their clothes were a little worn, but their eyes lit up like firecrackers when they saw the rows of colorful sweets. Let's split the rainbow belts, the girl whispered. No, you like the peanut clusters, the boy said. We'll get those. Zeke stepped back, pretending to line up some fudge boxes, but he watched. The kids walked up to the counter and placed a small bag of candy on the scale. The total came out to $3.75. The boy counted out change slowly: quarters, dimes, some nickels. He came up short. I think that's all we got, he said. The counter girl sighed. It's not enough. The kids looked at each other. The girl started to reach for the bag, ready to give it back. Zeke opened his mouth to step in, but the boy shook his head and said, wait. He took off a plastic bracelet from his wrist. It was faded and handmade with tiny beads that spelled hope. Can we trade this? He asked. It's special. I made it for Mom when she was sick, but she said I should give it to someone who needs hope too. Zeke froze. The girl behind the counter looked confused. We don't take trades. Before Zeke could say anything, someone else spoke. Milo. He stepped in, pulled a $5 bill from his pocket, and smiled at the kids. Don't worry about it, he said. It's on me. The boy's eyes went wide. But I want the bracelet, Milo said. I think I need some hope today. The girl giggled. The boy nodded and handed it over. Milo wrapped it around his wrist, and the two kids walked out, candy in hand, waving. Zeke stared at Milo, speechless. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. Milo shrugged, looking down. I remember what it was like, he said. When my mom couldn't afford stuff like that. I didn't want Em to feel small. Zeke felt a knot in his chest. Before he could say more, Trent stormed out of the office. Milo, what the hell, man? You comped candy again? This isn't a charity. You're lucky I don't dock that from your check. Zeke stepped forward. He paid for it himself. So? Trent snapped. Still not the point. If you start bending rules, people take advantage. Zeke looked him dead in the eye. I think we've got bigger problems than a couple of kids with big hearts. Trent narrowed his eyes. Who are you again? Zeke looked at Milo. Then at the rest of the staff, who were all watching now. He took a breath. Guess I should have started with the truth. My name's not Doug. He pulled off the glasses. Peeled the fake beard from his jaw. I'm Zeke Parlow. I own this place. Trent didn't even blink. He stood there, arms crossed, chewing the inside of his cheek like he was trying to decide whether to laugh or deny what he just heard. Parlow. The owner, he said, voice flat. You're serious? Zeke nodded once. Serious as I've ever been. Silence hung in the room. The girl behind the counter went still, her phone sliding slowly into her apron pocket. Milo glanced between them, his jaw tight, like he was bracing to get chewed out again. Trent finally spoke. All right. Guess you got me. Didn't think we raided the kind of drop-in. You don't, Zeke said. Which is why I had to come this way. Trent gave a dry half laugh but said nothing else. He turned and walked briskly into the back room, the door swinging shut behind him. Zeke looked around. A couple customers browsed the aisles, unaware of what just unfolded. The other two floor workers looked anywhere but at him. Zeke stepped behind the counter and pulled Milo aside. You on break? He asked. Milo hesitated. I wasn't going to take one. We're short. You're taking one now, Zeke said. 15 minutes. Out front. He didn't wait for a response. He removed his apron, set it down, and walked outside. The air was dry and hot, the street buzzing with weekend traffic. A bench sat under the awning a few feet from the store entrance. He sat down and waited. A minute later, Milo stepped out, rubbing the back of his neck like he wasn't sure if this was a trap. You all right? Zeke asked. Milo nodded, but it wasn't convincing. Look, Zeke said, I'm not here to cause a spectacle. But I saw what you did. That was more than decent. Milo sat down slowly, eyes on the sidewalk. I didn't do it for attention. I know, Zeke said. Milo glanced over. So, what happens now? That depends, Zeke said. You've been here how long? Little over a year. Started part-time while I was finishing high school. Stayed after I graduated. You like it here? Milo hesitated. I like the candy. Zeke laughed softly. That's fair. Milo shrugged. It's work. I try to do things right, but it gets tough. We're always understaffed. Trent's not exactly someone you go to with problems. Zeke nodded slowly. What about the others? Anyone been here longer? Julia's been here maybe 6 months, Milo said. She's solid. Quiet but handles her stuff. The rest cycle out fast. Most don't last more than a few weeks. Either Trent drives them out or they figure out the pay's not worth the stress. Zeke let that sit for a moment. You ever met Russ? The district guy? He came once. Stood around for 20 minutes. Talked to Trent. Then left. Didn't say a word to any of us. Zeke's jaw tightened slightly. Milo noticed. Honestly, I didn't think anyone up top cared. Milo said. Didn't know you even existed until today. I exist, Zeke said. I just stopped looking close enough. They sat in silence for a while, watching cars pass. A kid with a balloon walked by, tugging his dad's hand toward an ice cream shop across the street. You ever want to do something else? Zeke asked. Milo gave a small laugh. Sure. I wanted to be a vet when I was a kid. Spent so much time around stray animals, figured I might as well get paid for it. But college is expensive. Mom got laid off a while back. It's just me covering rent now. Zeke didn't respond right away. The weight in Milo's voice said more than he could. Eventually, they stood and walked back inside. The store felt even more hollow than before. One of the floor workers had left early, Zeke guessed, and the other was restocking quietly, eyes down. Trent stood behind the counter, arms folded. "You made your point," he said. "You want to talk? Let's do it in the back." Zeke didn't move. "No, we'll talk out here." Trent's nose flared. "You want to air dirty laundry in front of customers? There's only 3 people here, and none of them are listening," Zeke said. "Besides, this isn't about embarrassment. It's about accountability." Trent scoffed. "All right, fire me then. I've been carrying this place with half a crew and no support. You think you can do better? Be my guest." "No one asked you to carry anything," Zeke said. "You made it clear you don't respect the people working under you. You treat staff like they're disposable. That's not leadership. That's control." Trent looked away, jaw working. "You think I got options? You try running this place when half the applicants don't show up, and the ones who do quit when they learn they can't be on their phones all day. You don't motivate people by threatening them," Zeke said. "You motivate them by backing them up. You want loyalty, you show it first." Trent opened his mouth, but Zeke held up a hand. "I'm not going to argue with you. I've seen enough." Trent's shoulders dropped slightly, not in relief, more like he was bracing for the fall. "You're done here," Zeke said. "Effective immediately." Trent didn't speak. He just turned, walked into the back, and didn't return. Zeke looked around. The counter girl Julia apparently had paused mid-scan, eyes wide. "You all right?" Zeke asked. She nodded slowly. "Can you finish your shift?" "Yeah," she said. "I think so." "Good. I'll be here the rest of the day. Just do what you always do." She went back to her work, still glancing at him like he might float off at any moment. By late afternoon, Zeke had settled into the rhythm. He helped stock, showed an elderly customer how to use the scoop bins, and rang up a group of teens buying novelty lollipops. The store wasn't packed, but it was steady. At one point, Milo came up and handed him a folded note. "What's this?" Zeke asked. "From a customer. Said to give it to the guy in charge." Zeke opened it. The handwriting was small and neat. "Thank you for what you did earlier. My niece saw what happened with those kids. She said it was the kindest thing she's seen in a long time. I didn't catch your name, but you made today better." He folded the note and tucked it into his pocket. When the sun dipped below the buildings and the last customer left, Zeke locked the doors. Julia headed out quietly, giving him a small nod. Milo stayed behind, wiping down the counter. "You heading out?" Zeke asked. "I'll close." "It's fine. You've done enough today," Zeke said. "Clock out." "I've got it." Milo looked at him for a long moment. "You sure?" "I'm sure." As Milo gathered his backpack, he paused. "Hey," he said. "You're not just going to disappear again, right? Now that you've seen what it's really like." Zeke met his eyes. "No," he said. "I'm not." Milo nodded and left. Zeke stood there alone for a moment, looking around the store. It still needed work. Better lighting, new shelving, a full staff. But beneath the clutter, there was something worth saving. He walked into the back room, sat down at the tiny desk, and started making notes. Not just about Store 17, but the entire chain. He had 19 shops. If this one had slipped this far, how many others were teetering? He didn't have all the answers yet, but he knew the first step. Stop pretending the numbers told the whole story. He pulled out his phone and started drafting a message. Not to Russ. Not yet. To every store manager still working that night. He told them he would be visiting, unannounced, over the next 6 weeks. He told them he expected honesty, not presentations. And he told them he'd be watching how they treated the people who made their stores run. Not the spreadsheets, the people. The following week, Zeke's calendar was cleared without fanfare. He didn't explain his absence to the executive team, only left instructions that district managers were to handle day-to-day without relying on his approval. He didn't want filtered updates or curated store visits. He wanted the kind of clarity he'd only gotten by standing behind the counter as Doug. On Wednesday morning, he walked into Store 9 on the east side of the city. The place was larger than 17, with wide aisles and a central display that once featured a working chocolate fountain. Now, the fountain was dry and dusty, the signage faded. One of the ceiling lights flickered in a slow, irregular pattern. He didn't disguise himself this time. He introduced himself to the assistant manager, a tall woman in her 30s named Kira. Her eyes widened and she straightened her name badge. "I thought you worked out of state," she said. "I've been in the wrong place for too long," Zeke replied. "I'm here to observe. Not looking for a presentation. Just keep doing what you're doing." She nodded slowly, then gestured toward the back. "You're welcome to walk with me." Stock truck came in late. As they moved down the aisle, Zeke noticed a boy maybe 12 sitting alone on a bench near the window. No candy in hand, just a small notebook in his lap, scribbling furiously. A half-empty bottle of water sat beside him. "He's been there all morning," Kira said. "I offered him samples. He said he's waiting for someone. Wouldn't say who? Anyone ask him to leave?" "Not yet. He's not bothering anyone." Zeke watched him for another moment, then followed Kira into the storage area. The backroom was cramped, boxes stacked to the ceiling, but organized. Two younger employees were breaking down cardboard near the loading dock, both moving slowly. One adjusted her wrist brace between each box. "Everyone all right back here?" Zeke asked. Kira looked over her shoulder. "Fatigue's real," she said. "We've been running with 4 people since mid-month. We're supposed to have 7. What happened to the others?" 2 quit last week after their schedules were cut without notice. 1 called in 3 days straight. Haven't heard from her since. Zeke didn't respond. His eyes drifted to the posted schedule taped to a cabinet. Several names were crossed out in red marker. Others had shifts marked with TBD. He turned back to Kira. "Do you have hiring support? Positions are open, but HR didn't approve the sign-on bonus for this location. Applications have stalled." "How long has it been like this?" She crossed her arms. "Since we stopped getting weekend deliveries. That forced us to schedule double unloads midweek. Fewer hands, more product, longer hours." Zeke nodded once. "You've been holding it together." Kira didn't look flattered. "I've been showing up. That's not the same." Before he left the store, Zeke walked back to the boy on the bench. "You waiting for someone?" he asked. The boy looked up. His eyes were alert, but his face held the kind of guarded calm Zeke had seen before in kids who had to learn adult patience too early. "My sister works here," the boy said. "She's closing tonight. I don't want her walking to the train alone." Zeke's throat tightened. "You wait here every night?" "Only when my dad's on shift. He's got a late route." "What's your sister's name?" "Jade." Zeke had seen the schedule. Jade was on the closing shift, and she'd been scheduled 5 days in a row. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "Tell her Zeke said she's doing a good job, and that I'll be making sure she gets the help she needs." The boy took the card without a word, then went back to scribbling in his notebook. Zeke left the store without another word. The next morning, he called a meeting with the HR lead. "I want all hiring freezes lifted immediately," he said. "If a store needs staff, they get approval. No more delays. Budgets are irrelevant if the stores collapse. I've seen the gaps. I'm not asking." After the call, he drove out to Store 11, a suburban location near a shopping plaza. The parking lot was full, but inside, the store was quiet. A single employee ran the register while another stocked shelves near the back. The manager wasn't on the floor. Zeke approached the counter. The cashier, a young man with deep circles under his eyes, barely looked up. "Is your manager in?" Zeke asked. "She's in the office. Been there most of the day. Mind if I introduce myself?" The cashier hesitated. then gestured toward the hallway behind the counter. Zeke walked past the swing gate and knocked once before opening the door. The manager sat at the desk, scrolling through a spreadsheet. She didn't look up. "We're not doing interviews today," she said. "Good," Zeke replied. "I'm not here for that." She turned. Recognition flickered across her face. "You're the owner." Zeke nodded. "Well," she said, standing, "if I'd known you were coming, I would've. I didn't want you to know. I'm not here to be impressed." She sat down slowly. "Fair enough." Zeke gestured to the open laptop. "What are we looking at? Sales?" "Trying to figure out where the margin drop's coming from." "That's my job," Zeke said. "Yours is to make sure your team isn't burning out." "They're not," she said quickly. "They're just stretched." "How many hours have you worked this week?" She hesitated. 62. "And your lead cashier?" 50. Maybe 55. Zeke leaned against the wall. "Why didn't you ask for help?" "I did. Russ told me to hold steady until next quarter." Zeke's jaw clenched. Not from surprise, but from confirmation. "I'll be speaking with Russ," he said. "But I want your honest take. How long can your team keep this up?" She didn't answer right away. "Then, 2 more weeks. Then I lose both my closers." Zeke nodded once. "You won't. I'll make sure of it." He left without further discussion. By Friday, he'd visited 6 locations. Every store told a different story, but the pattern was clear: overworked staff, absentee leadership, and district managers who had stopped listening. At headquarters, he called a meeting with every regional lead. No slides. No reports. Just seats in a circle. He stood in the center. "I've seen enough," he said. "And I'm not impressed." One of the district managers opened his mouth. Zeke raised a hand. "Don't explain. Listen." He described the boy with the bracelet. The sister who closed 5 nights a week. The cashier who hadn't taken a full lunch in a month. He didn't name names. He didn't have to. "You've all been sending me clean numbers and safe summaries," he said. "But you've been stepping over people to get them." Someone shifted in their chair. No one spoke. "So here's how this is going to work," he continued. "Every district manager will be required to spend 2 shifts a week on the floor. Different stores, rotating schedule. I want first-hand reports, real ones." He paused. "And Russ?" Russ looked up slowly. "Yes. You're stepping down. Effective today. This isn't personal. It's overdue." Russ didn't argue. He stood, nodded once, and left the room. Zeke turned back to the group. "I'm not interested in punishment. I'm interested in change. If any of you believe you can't lead from the floor up, tell me now. I'll understand." No one moved. "Good," Zeke said. "Then we start tomorrow." He walked out of the room without looking back. He had more stores to visit. More stories to hear. And a promise to keep to every kid who waited on a bench and every worker who showed up when no one else would. Zeke arrived at store 17 just after opening the following Monday. The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the haze, and the storefront still cast long shadows across the sidewalk. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cinnamon clusters and lemon sugar, but there was tension beneath the sweetness. A new interim manager, a woman named Sadie, was already behind the counter reviewing the morning checklist with quiet precision. She transferred in from store 2, one of the highest-rated shops in the chain, and she moved with the calm decisiveness of someone used to putting out fires without raising her voice. Milo stood near the bulk bins, refilling a depleted tub of cherry ropes. He glanced up when Zeke entered, then went back to work without pause. There was no ceremony, no fanfare. Just a nod that said, "I see you." That was enough. Zeke stepped past a display of caramel pretzel clusters and approached Sadie. "How's the first shift going?" he asked. She didn't look up from the clipboard. "Short one opener. Julia's running late. Her bus got rerouted because of a water main break." Zeke checked his watch. "She texted." "She did. 10 minutes out. She already offered to stay late to make up the time." He nodded. "Tell her not to. Just work her scheduled shift." Sadie finally looked up. "Understood. Anything you want me to focus on today?" "Listen more than you talk. They've had things bottled up for too long." She gave a short nod and returned to her checklist. Zeke turned to Milo, who was now breaking down a stack of shipping boxes near the counter. "You sleep at all this weekend?" Zeke asked. "Some," Milo said. "Not as much as I needed." "You eat?" Mostly peanut butter and cereal. Zeke leaned on the counter. There's a diner 2 blocks down. You've got 20 minutes starting now. Take it. Milo blinked. I just clocked in. I know. You'll still get paid for the time. Go. Milo hesitated, then peeled off his apron and grabbed his backpack from under the register. As he reached the door, he paused. You're not just doing this to look good, right? Zeke shook his head. I'm doing it because I should have done it a year ago. Milo didn't say anything else. He just walked out. By midday, the store was steady. A new hire, Brendan, was shadowing Julia as she handled the floor with quiet efficiency. He asked questions, took notes, and didn't pretend to know things he didn't. Zeke noticed Julia checking on him, often not micromanaging, just making sure he didn't get lost in the rhythm of the shift. It was the kind of peer leadership that didn't come from training manuals. Back in the office, Zeke reviewed the updated staffing matrix Sadie had compiled. 3 interviews were scheduled that week, 2 with referrals from current staff. HR had finally reinstated the sign-on bonus. It wasn't much, but it opened the door for more flexible scheduling. Still, it would take time to rebuild. Zeke didn't expect miracles. He just needed the momentum to shift. By late afternoon, the store had quieted. A lull between school let out and the evening crowd. Zeke stepped outside for some air. He stood beside the window where the 2 kids had stood days earlier, their candy bags now long gone, but their gesture still fresh in his mind. He heard footsteps approach. Milo again. You got a second? Milo asked. Zeke turned. Always. Milo shifted his weight. I talked to my mom last night, told her about everything, about you showing up, the changes. How'd she take it? She cried, Milo said. Thought I was lying for a second. Said nobody in charge ever cared that much where she used to work. Zeke nodded. She sounds smart. She is. She's applying at the bakery down the street. Said she wants to work somewhere that feels like it's moving forward again. They stood in silence for a beat. I was planning to leave, Milo said. Before all this. Had my resume ready and everything. What changed your mind? That bracelet, Milo said. I kept thinking about that kid. He gave up something that mattered to him just to make someone's day better. Made me feel like I owed it to myself not to walk away yet. Zeke looked down at Milo's wrist. The bracelet was still there. Some of the beads had faded, the string fraying slightly at the knots. Hold on to it, Zeke said. Remind yourself why you stayed. Milo nodded. I think I will. Later that week, Zeke flew out to Store 14, a location that had been flagged for underperformance in the previous quarter. It was in a small college town, surrounded by discount clothing outlets and a shuttered bookstore. The store was clean but sterile, like someone had followed a manual without ever understanding the spirit behind it. The employees followed protocol, but there was no warmth. No jokes across aisles, no casual check-ins at the register. The manager, a man named Caleb, greeted Zeke politely but kept glancing at the clock. Zeke spent most of the day there, walking the floor, helping a mother navigate the nut-free candy options for her daughter's birthday party. He restocked a section of jelly fruit slices and swept behind the counter. No one asked why. They just moved around him like he was another shift worker. That told him everything he needed to know. At the end of the day, he sat with Caleb in the break room. You've got good people here, Zeke said, but they look over their shoulders every time they laugh. Caleb raised an eyebrow. We run a tight ship. I'd rather you run an honest one. Let them breathe. Let them screw up and fix it. They'll work harder for you if they're not afraid of you. Caleb leaned back. That your leadership philosophy? Zeke stood. It is now. He returned home later that weekend. The house was quiet, the inbox full. He ignored the emails, sat down at the kitchen table, and opened a notebook. Not a laptop, a notebook. He wrote out a list of every store, every manager, every employee who had gone above and beyond without being asked. He titled the page, The Foundation. At the top of the list was Milo. He didn't want to build a new culture from the top down. That hadn't worked. This time he'd build it from the middle out. The people who showed up cared quietly and made choices that didn't benefit them but made things better anyway. Those were the ones who would shape what came next. The following Monday, Zeke returned to headquarters for the first time in 2 weeks. His assistant greeted him with a stack of memos and a nervous glance. "You missed the operations meeting," she said. "I know," Zeke replied, setting his keys on the desk. "They'll adjust." He walked into the conference room where the executive team waited. No slides. No reports. Just faces. He stood at the head of the table. "I've made my decision," he said. "We've been managing for metrics. Starting today, we manage for people. That means fewer reports, more time in stores. Department heads will each be assigned 2 locations to visit every month. No exceptions." One of the directors leaned forward. "What are we looking for?" Zeke didn't hesitate. "Listen for what's missing. And when you find someone doing the right thing without being told, write their name down. We're building from there." There were no questions, just pens moving across notepads. That afternoon, Zeke returned to store 17. Not to check up, just to be there. He stood behind the counter as Julia trained another new hire. Milo was off that day, but the bracelet was still on the breakroom pegboard. He'd taken it off before heading home, as if to leave a marker behind. A little before closing, a boy came in with a girl beside him. Different kids this time, but the same kind of wide-eyed wonder. Zeke rang up their candy, watched them count out change carefully. They came up short by a few cents. Zeke slid the bag across the counter. "Close enough," he said. The boy looked up. "Really?" Zeke nodded. "Really." They beamed, said thank you, and walked out hand in hand. Zeke watched them go, then turned back to the register. This was what it was supposed to be. Not a business that ran on fear. A place that made people feel seen. And now finally it was becoming that again.